Alan Brown is the president and CEO of Railmark Holdings. He began his railroad career shortly after the railroad industry was deregulated, and he has been in it since. He formed Railmark Holdings in 1998, where he remains today. Railmark and Mr. Brown have developed international rail business experience in 16 countries, working on 4 or more international rail projects at any given time. Railmark develops and sells eco-safe rail products, and he has a background in economics and a BBA in finance. And I'm going to turn things over to him now. Thank you.
Thank you. All day long today, I've been wondering what's lacking in this conference, and I just remembered it. It's a joke. But I wanted you to know that it's not just it's a serious joke. Well, not a serious joke, but a serious comment. Last night, I just finished with my lawyer's office. I finally got my will exactly the way I want it. I've even got it down to my funeral and who would be my pallbearers. I decided to have 6 beautiful young women be my pallbearers at my funeral because over my lifetime, I have struggled with women, and so for once, I like to think that they could struggle with me. Okay, so much for that quickie. Thank you, Nikki, for the introduction. I've been kind of quiet about this strategy for the last couple of years. Currently, our company has 8 transloading facilities in the state of Michigan, with 2 more under development in Michigan and 2 more under development in just across the river in Ontario. We have facilities in other states. Our company's general philosophy in anticipating these trends in transloading, our company's general philosophy was to create a network that would touch about 40% of all U.S. citizens and about 80% of all Canadians. So Michigan has been a very important target or as a base in our strategy, and you'll see why in just a second. Why even talk about transloading? I mean, I try to use this same example when people say, well, why passenger rail? Why more trains? And the answer is really simple to me. Today we have 325 million people in the United States, and it's projected to be 550 million people by the year 2050. Well, so we have 225 million more people, most of which will be younger, more people driving. I'm sure gas will be higher than it is now. And so there's obviously a proverbial crash at the end of the road here if we don't do something about it. Transloading is a wonderful option. And so my comments today, while some of the presenters today have kind of given you, big overviews and policy type things, I thought I might just direct my comments after my first few slides to people like the politicians or to urban planners or to shippers that just want simply some answers right now, and how do you go and get that? So that's what we're going to talk about today. Nikki, what do I press? This one? That one. Okay, there we go. So, this was the version. Okay. So let's talk about Michigan, for example, because I'm not even from Michigan. I decided to locate my business here, and why? It's really the top line, that Michigan can be regarded as the center of the universe for logistics and supply chain management. I mean, it's a $14 trillion a year globally, but let's take a minute and look at Michigan's numbers. Okay, we're going to start off by talking about Michigan international truck trade. It's the #1 state for loaded truck container crossings. Obviously, the Detroit Port Huron, #1. #3, land ports in the U.S. The Ambassador Bridge is the #1 U.S. international border crossing. Blue Water Bridge is the second U.S. international bridge crossing. It's the #1 state for NAFTA truck trade. And I guess right now I want to say this. If you don't remember a thing I say today, remember this next sentence here. In 2006, and these are kind of hard numbers to get, and I have a master's degree in economics, and it's still kind of hard, but from what we can find, it's the #1 state for NAFTA truck trade, at $152.6 billion in 2006. And this is what I want you to remember. There are plenty of opportunities for rail transloading and removing trucks from the Michigan roads. And you got $156 billion of truck business every year. I mean, I have personally customers where there's trucks that leave Michigan and go to Mexico, or vice versa, or from Michigan to Canada, Canada to Michigan. I mean, and we're talking about all the congestion at these crossings. I mean, there's a dollar figure, and so I think as a businessman, and also I guess as a citizen, and I guess as a policy, as a state policy directive, if you want to decrease maintenance on your roads, if you want to create more local jobs, if you want to have options for more shippers, I mean, this is a really big piece of pie we could bite into, wouldn't you think? It's a lot of money. Now that, of course, it's been spoken today that cost of trucking is going up because of hours of service and fuel and everything else, shortage of drivers, and it's only going to get worse. I mean, I just quoted a job recently to a company that they're going to be transloading on the front end and even transloading in Mexico, and it's still going to be cheaper than having that truck leave every day, Michigan, go down to deep into Mexico. Nikki, sorry about that. Okay, so now we talked about it for a minute about the Michigan truck trade. Michigan International Rail Trade, I mean, some of these numbers have already been spoken about today. $44.5 billion in Canada and Mexico in rail. I think someone had a presentation of $22 billion in just rail to Canada, so it's 44 point in all. Again, 45% of all North American rail trade comes through Michigan. Port Huron at $26 billion, Detroit at $18 billion. On the ship side, again, two of the top 10 largest maritime ports for NAFTA trade. The world's busiest canal, it's not the Panama or Suez, it's the Detroit River is the world's busiest canal. Great Lakes and Ocean Connections. I think there was another presentation where it illustrated Michigan's strength with water that we ought to be looking at again as well. So given Michigan's position in the global logistics and supply chain management trade, and I think there was another slide, I think, was it Marge's, that had the large kind of brownish area that showed this area being like the largest shipping area in the U.S. But today I want to quickly cover trends in rail transloading, advantages, development of the facilities themselves, the promotion of them, and the operation of them. Okay, trends. The trends, the future for both U.S. and Michigan continues to grow as shippers look to expand markets, controlling rising truck costs, and increasing their efficiencies, and I might also add, in trying to reach out into new marketplaces. This is also very hard research, but we've kind of come up with our own economic model, and we've kind of, I guess I'm pretty safe to say that since 2000, we've had an annual average growth rate in just rail transloading at about 5.5% annually, and it's going to continue to follow this trend. And since deregulation, and I think a lot of people forget about this, people that have whose businesses may have gone to trucks and now they're still with trucks and they're seeing their own cost rise. But people fail to realize that since deregulation, rail rates are 45% cheaper today on a price-adjusted basis than they were back before 1981. U.S. logistics, in which rail transloading is a subset, accounts for 9% and rising of the total gross domestic product. I do have some pictures, but I want to tell you some good facts, and this is also, I think, on your flash drive too. So the advantages are of transloading. Obviously, it's been said that it provides access to the rail networks with people who aren't directly served by rail. It benefits the local economy, creates jobs, creates or enhances local businesses, and support companies like trucking. Rail transloading reduces the overall carbon footprint. I tell people some of the examples of when it comes to that about creating the jobs is that sometimes a lot of the Western carriers are wanting to ship their products into the Joliet area, and they figured they can cut out one of the Eastern carriers and just do some transloading and trucking into Michigan. Well, the problem is that truck driver is beating up I-94, and plus he probably lives in Indiana or Illinois, whereas in transloading, you would hire for the short haul a local driver who would be more likely to stick with his job because he's not out all the time. He may make 4 runs a day, but he goes home at 5 o'clock. An effectively promoted rural transloading facility is a key economic development tool for the community's business development efforts. If nothing else, if you have, and here's your community, and for years I think the old school was, let's build a spec building and have it all nice and shiny, and maybe somebody will be attracted to that building. We cut them a deal if they come and create some jobs. Well, many communities have sat on spec buildings for probably decades, or seen other buildings, people exit those buildings. An effective local transloading effort in your community will help you create business development efforts. And then, should an industry find that they can utilize rail, maybe they're in the recycling business and they're recycling cardboard or something, or some other product, or now one of the growing trends is especially agricultural products. And so even if a railroad's nearby, the cost of constructing a switch, depending on, I'm in that business, so depending on if the railroad's going to have, the Class 1's going to have it done for you and then add on a profit, it could be anywhere from, $65, $75, and $125,000 just for the switch. And you're looking at anywhere from $150 to $165 a foot on the rest of the construction. So sometimes rail transloading, if you're not having to drive very far, an industry can start benefiting from it while it generates its economic flows to justify having its own siding placed into the property. And I've heard this story many times where you hear someone say, hey, I bought this building and there was a railroad track that runs right past it, and my real estate agent said that I could put a switch onto it. And that's not always the case. So transloading can quickly get the industry back into the rail business. And also, it's long been proven with numerous state and federal studies all over the country that removing trucks from the roads directly reduces taxpayer-funded maintenance costs. And there's one of the ones that I think Kansas has done a real good job on these studies. But it actually shows that even if you use public money to a private endeavor that takes trucks off the road, I think the numbers were, you've seen it before, 1 to 3. It's a quick payback. Now, on the development of a transloading facility, it would be nice if we lived in a world where we could say, where a community could say, or a railroad could say, we'd like to have this facility, and we need $300 million, 100, whatever the number was, and to build this, and maybe they'll come. Well, as you know, that's just not going to happen. But so you have to still be kind of proactive, and you have to still start the process, because if you have a shipper call you that says, hey, I'd like to transload in this town right here, or I'd like to get to this point in this town, and if you have nothing, not even a track, they're going to say, well, I kind of wanted to start shipping next month or next week, and if you don't have it now, I got to go somewhere else. And so it's very important to start the process of planning transloading facilities and actually start putting in certain integral components, but not really build the whole facility out. And so I'm not going to go through all the lists there, but these are some desired transloading facility features, no matter what kind of a commodity you're going to handle. And that's also another thing too. You really should locate and develop a base customer first. If you had the money and you said, well, we're going to put bulk unloading over here, we're going to put warehousing over here, and if you start planning this out, all of a sudden your facility may have 80% of its usage with bulk, and all of a sudden you've already kind of built other things into it. So it's really it's kind of a chicken and egg thing, really. I mean, it really is. But these are the features that you need to have. Obviously, good highway access and close to certified truck skills. That's a very important feature. If you're not close to one, you need to just plan that in your budget. I'm not going to go through all you can read it here later. But however, if you get the government, your local government behind it, this element right here, this foreign trade zone, this is something that a government can apply for, and this makes a big difference. A very good friend of mine and his brother bought a big hunk of raw property in Illinois around Effingham 12 years ago, and it had the CSX on one side and had the Canadian National on the other. And so they decided they were going to build a rail line to connect the two railroads and develop this whole industrial park and everything. And it took them a long time, but like today, it's got actual, I think it's like 4 different industries. And I mean, it's sometimes it's a long view that you need to take, but you got to start. Or some guy in the neighboring town 30 miles down the road is going to start. And then the different types of transloading facilities. I mean, you have to understand what the flows are coming in and out of your area. I mean, are you primarily agriculture, chemical, steel? You have to understand the flows in your area because there's different kinds of, I like to stand on this side, because there's different kinds of transloading facilities. Like you have pneumatic unloading. That's pretty easy. In the picture I showed you, I think up front, that was pneumatic. You got liquid, ag, bulk, and each of these different types of transloading has different certain features or characteristics of the site that you need to have. And it continues too, boxcar loading and unloading, center beam, bulkhead. And then if you're lucky enough as a community or an area where you're kind of even close to water for the development of rail to barge business, inland ports is I mean, you've heard it in other presentations today, inland ports is another huge growing interest all over the country because of the export. I mean, think for a minute with what Michigan has now with NAFTA and our trade with Canada and Mexico. What happens in a few years if we're lucky enough to get the European free trade zone they're trying to do with those 23 European countries, and all of a sudden things are coming back to Halifax and elsewhere? Inland ports is a huge rising interest. So if there was a 5-mile stretch to what used to be a port, I'd be trying to build it back. Oh, and this is important too. If you're a community and you have a vacant rail-served spec building or a building that the government controls or some kind of way, if you want to increase jobs and economic viability, forget about trying to hawk it to the next industry that wants to locate in your town. You need to make it into a transload facility immediately. This top picture is it's a crosstalk. But anyway, and so you got to look at the commodities coming in and out of your market area, and sometimes you don't always want to approach the person that's physically in your area. He may be the receiver of plastics, for example. Well, he's not going to dictate. I mean, he can give you a little information, but he's not going to dictate how that plastic company ships the plastics into them. He buys on a delivered basis. So sometimes you have to look beyond the brick and mortar at your locality and go to what's being shipped to them. Then you need to promote your facility, is use as many methods as possible. I mean, the community needs to promote it. The economic development people need to promote it. The railroads, everybody needs to put everything on everybody's website. And believe it or not, this is, I never thought I'd say this, but internet search engine positioning is very important too with promoting your facility. Now, we kind of got into that a second ago with promotion. Kind of got a little ahead of myself there. Promoting it is a major economic benefit of the community. This is kind of important too. You want to get an operator in there, or the railroad needs to be able to promote a seamless quote to the customer. And I just recently worked on a project where the customer wanted to start out in Milwaukee and end in Honduras. Well, he wanted one rate. We can do it. That's not a problem. But you need to make it real simple. This is this item right here. I'm not going to say who. Let me see. But there's some transloading companies that want to charge you the base and then have all these little upcharges and line items and make it so complicated so you get your invoice and sticker shock, and that's not good either. In terms of the operation itself, I mean, it needs to be lighted, properly secured, the appropriate service features for the type of business that you're going to be handling in there, well-maintained equipment, and a staffing that's customer service oriented. Because, like I tell my people, when that truck driver pulls into our gate, I mean, in a way, he's not the customer, but he is the customer. Because if he goes back and complains that he didn't get unloaded fast, or he didn't have a place to use a restroom, or any of those kind of things, it could backfire on you in terms of future business. And if you, of course, do those things right, then I mean, I have transloading deals that I started, or even with other companies 12 and 15 years ago, that are still going good. You have to do this. This is a record keeping. This is important because, a lot of times you have somebody making these decisions in corporate offices way far away, and they just need to have the satisfaction on knowing that, okay, the last truck arrived, he had this amount of product, now everything's done, it's loaded, here's the seals for your rail car. And good communications is important. And that's it. So I guess it's question time. Yes, ma'am. You want to, yeah, there you go. Yeah, we're on internet.
So could you talk a little bit about the catchment area? Like, how far can your transload reach? It probably depends on length of haul for the total move, but in your experience.
Okay, that's a good question. Obviously, 5 or 10 or 15 miles is super. You can't always do that. What is needed all over the country? I mean, all over the country, not just in Michigan, and as in many places in Michigan as you can economically sustain it, is more and more of these type of transload facilities. It could be something as small as a guy that gets 5 cars a week of something like a plastics, and the connecting railroad or the short line, gives them a dedicated track. I mean, the point is that the more transloading facilities that can be developed, and the more people get behind them in terms of the communities and the economic development, and having good operators that want to raise the bar on professionalism with transload facilities, sooner or later there'll be that'll help. I mean, and sometimes I found that when you're pushing 75 miles for a truck, you're kind of pushing it a little bit economically. Now, I'm not saying that when fuel goes up a little bit that number could be a little bit better. And I'm not trying to pick on any particular railroad, but let's say a customer is on short line A, and that short line only interchanges with Norfolk Southern. You know what? I'm going to give you a better example. I'll give you one that just happened recently. There was a situation where a customer on CSX in the Detroit area had a particular move, 5 rail cars a month, going down to a place in the south. I'm not going to say where, but it was on the Norfolk Southern. Well, what we found with that, and so if you're here, CSX, I did you, I got paid for it, but I did you all a favor. What we found was that it was cheaper. It was cheaper in deep Georgia, where the Norfolk Southern was. It was cheaper to pay $2,200 to transload the rail car at origin, and that way it stays on the CSX all the way up to the final destination. That customer saved, minus my fee, he saved about $3,500 to $4,000. He does 5 rail cars a month. I mean, do the math. He got a raise. He was a real hero. And so all of a sudden now, the same company is looking at, oh wow, where our products either originate or terminate versus who we are served by is important too. And I'm not picking on any other railroad other than customers now, when they can save a couple $1,000s a rail car, and they have more rail cars a month, and all of a sudden they're open to the idea of transloading at origin or destination or something that's maybe not quite, call the railroad, have them pick the car up, and it goes. So this is where transloading is real important, not just to the customers that don't have rail, but customers that want more of a competitive access. Now, at $200,000 a year, the company's going to save, or I think it was $180,000. All of a sudden, their owners and managers are pretty happy. They may hire another couple of people, or they may expand, or they may provide better benefit. I mean, everything trickles down to the good when you can save on transportation. So that's probably the best example I can give you. Instead of making one up, I'll just give you a true life one. Anyone else? You've asked everybody else a question. I'm disappointed you haven't asked me one. I sat here for and you asked 5 questions, and now you don't ask me a question. You have a question? I'm not from here. No, I came here for the first slide. That this is kind of a black hole of logistics. I mean, there's a lot of. Another slide was like that with the. I mean, with the trends in transportation and transloading. I mean, minus a few hiccups in the auto industry and maybe a 2008 problem with the housing industry. I mean, it's still a hell of a place to be in the railroad and logistics business. I think that's my opinion. And even up north, yes, sir. I mean, yes. So we've been here about 7.5, 8 years now.
I have a question.
I was from Illinois.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So you've done this now for a while. When you look at sorry, I've been kind of bouncing back and forth,
That's
so I
okay.
didn't see your whole presentation. But when you look at the business environment and how businesses are changing today, if you designed a transload terminal 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and then you look at it designing one today, is it the same game, or is something changing?
It'd be different. Unfortunately, things like security and there's been some other features that weren't important 10 or 12 years ago. You could a railroad could just have an open siding and just let somebody come transload, whether it's soda ash or plastics. But now you're looking at a situation where, I don't know if you all know this or not, but in these plastic pellet cars, like the one that's in the picture, there's about $125,000 worth of commodity in that car. The car itself, if it's a used car, is like $80,000. It could be. I mean, so there's a lot of money there. So security has become very important, more so than it ever has. Also, 12 years ago, we would have just sent the guy up the car ladder, or up the ladder on the side of the car to open the hatch and hold the nozzle while it fills. And of course, now we need to do fall protection and make sure that it's changed a little bit. But the main thing is that it's important to get transloading out there to communities and to all points on a short line or a railroad, and try to reach out to customers. I mean, if a guy is driving, even if the guy's driving 300 miles to get into Detroit now with his load, and he can cut that by half, I mean, everything has a mathematical benefit to it. And it's tricky because, then you got to add the cost of the short line in there. But overall, in the end, it's transloading is where it's going. And again, get back to my first comments. There's 325 million people now. It's going to go to 550 million in the year 2050. We have increasing NAFTA trade. We have this potential European free trade zone. And it's somewhere, if Michigan wants to grow, that means more output or more throughput of something, and that also translates back to rail. And I don't know if you heard this, Dr. Latala, my first slide, where I said that there's $158 billion a year of truck trade going to and from Canada and to and from Mexico from Michigan. I mean, you don't think you can steal a little bit of that for transloading? I mean, just think of how many trucks that is, and not just on Michigan roads, but all over. So anyway, it's a good thing. So if you represent any economic development areas or or cities or anything like that. I mean, it's really something you should add to your economic tools and arsenal of opportunities to talk about. And I mean, anymore people, it's nice to talk about your schools and nice schools, but anymore the customer's going to want how much is it going to take to ship my products into or out of my facility. And there's another question? Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, like Pazzi, I've been bouncing in and out of the presentations, but from a transload standpoint, how does Michigan use its 286,000, it's 186,000 pound truckloads to an advantage and being able to ship transload to rail?
I have to compete against that. That's a tough one, and it's nothing you can do about it. I doubt very seriously the legislature is going to go back and change it and make it lower.
But I'm looking at it as an opportunity where we can move things to a transload facility, put it on rail.
Yes, sir. Okay, and yes, sir.
Ship
Yes,
it
sir.
out of state. How do we
Yes,
use
sir.
that?
Well, that's certainly an advantage. Yes, sir. As a matter of fact, I remember one of those a load of aggregates coming in not too long ago, just south of Lansing, and it had its detachable pup, and it was able to haul twice as much in at a time. We're handling some of these large tanker trucks that come in with 11,000 gallons of oil. They're obviously a lot heavier too, but yes, it is an advantage. I think anywhere where you can shorten the truck piece and increase the rail piece, it's going to create many local jobs. I mean, many local jobs. Take trucks off the road. I went through it just a second ago. That's why if I was a preacher and we're all at Sunday service, I mean, I would really be preaching that you go home and try to find a place that'd be a good transload point, and let's start canvassing more industries. Even though I'm in this business, and there's other people in this business too. There's $158 billion a year. That's a lot. That's a big piece of the pie to try to take a little bit out for transloading. There's enough for everybody, is what I'm trying to say. And the idea is to work collaboratively and together with the local communities. I'm working with some local communities now. We're not quite through the process, and they've kind of seen the light, and they want some local jobs and help their local industries. And it's just rail is contagious. I mean, everywhere that I go, and someone made comments a minute ago about the increase in the agricultural output in the state of Michigan. Well, as that increases, they're going to need more fertilizers. I mean, you're not going to drive fertilizer trucks up, and then the more fertilizers you need in the area, somebody's going to come along and say, I can be a fertilizer distributor in this region, and I can get it by rail and distribute it to the farmers or to the co-ops, and the same can go true with all the recycling that's being done now. I mean, we recycle everything, and there's a rail market for all of it. Okay, I guess that's it. Thank you, and thank you for your question too.